listening to the John Barrett Leadership Podcast, where you'll hear great ideas, insight, and inspiration to level up your leadership ability.
Hey everyone, it is John Barrett on the John Barrett Leadership Podcast. I am so excited that you are here listening. Wherever you're at, we want to add value to you. As I always say, we want to help level you up so you don't level out in your influence and your impact. We want you to be the best leader that you can be, not only for your own success, but so that you can help others out to be successful. And that's going to make you invaluable as a leader. The more you develop yourself, the more you're going to be able to develop others, the more you're going to be able to do, the more success you're going to have, the more influence you're going to have, the more impact, the more income. Everything goes up when you go up. When you get better, everything around you get better. So that's what this podcast is all about. I'm so glad you're listening. Hey, listen, go to johnbarrettleadership.com. If you haven't been there for a while, or if you're new to this podcast, go check out all the resources that I've got over there. I've got all kinds of free ebooks. I've got guides. The 5 conversations every leader should have is literally a guide to help you through these 5 different types of conversations that you should be having with your team on an ongoing basis. So there's all kinds of Kickstarter questions, really, really great dialogue that's going to help resource you to be a really great leader. There's also all kinds of other tips and different strategies and all that over at johnbarrettleadership.com, and you can go check all those things out. So do me a favor, go over there so I can add value to you. All right, let's talk about this month's episode. 6 pitfalls every leader should avoid. 6 pitfalls that every leader should avoid. Now, we're going to unpack these 6 pitfalls today, and I really want you to pay attention because what I've seen in over 20 years, I'm actually coming up almost on 25 years of coaching leaders and working with leaders in the profit world, nonprofit world, the government world, school, every industry you can kind of think of, from national to international coaching. Been working with leaders all over for many, many years, and these are the pitfalls that I see. What I'm going to share with you today are literally some of the common pitfalls that I see that leaders fall into, and it sabotages their influence, it limits their ability to make an impact, and it's a common pitfall that a lot of leaders fall into. Even the best of leaders, it's easy to slip in and fall into these pitfalls where we get trapped and we're not sure how to get out. We kind of dig ourselves in a hole, and instead of being effective and moving forward, we kind of find ourselves trapped. So these are 6 things that I've identified that I want to encourage you with today, because if you can learn to avoid these, to not fall into them, right? It's like a big pothole in the road that you see and you're trying to swerve around it, but I don't want you to hit that thing and fall into it and get lost. I want you to avoid these so that you can be more successful. And if you'll learn to avoid these pitfalls, if you identify what they are and begin to intentionally work your way around them so that you don't violate these things, then you're going to find yourself on the road to success. You're going to find yourself on the path to progress, the path of success, because you are not hitting these pitfalls that are going to damage your influence. So here we go. Number 1 that I want you to think about is this: support, don't sabotage. I want you to think about, how are you going to support your team, not sabotage them? Some of the pitfalls that I see leaders fall into is they begin to sabotage their team. Now, not intentionally. Nobody wakes up and says, boy, I hope I sabotage my team's success today. Of course not. You wouldn't be listening to this if that was your heart, if that was your attitude. You don't want to sabotage your team, but here's what happens. When you don't give support to your team, you begin to sabotage them unintentionally. And I'm telling you, I've seen it happen so many times. We begin to micromanage. We begin to get negative. We begin to kind of undermine different behaviors that go on because we're sabotaging our team when we do this. Listen, you got to understand that you've got to give your team what they need to succeed. You've got to give them what they need to succeed. You don't over-expect from your team and then under-resource the people around you. You can't do it. You can't over-expect results and then under-resource them with what they need. And I see leaders doing this all the time. They're not giving the proper support by providing resources, providing opportunities to eliminate all the excuses that hold people back. They don't support them and give them what they need. Now, they have high expectations. You want your team to output incredible results. But here's the deal. If you don't give them what they need and resource them, how are you going to expect that from them? And I see a lot of leaders that they expect a lot from their team, but they're not providing the support that they need. So I want you to think about this. Now, this support can come through external sources. This support can come through maybe just you and literally your time and energy. But a lot of times what I see happen is they're not providing the proper resources, the support that they need. They're not getting others around them. They're not listening to the needs of the team. And as a result, they're sabotaging success because they're demanding more and more and more without the support that they need. So I want you to think about where in your leadership might you be sabotaging your team unknowingly because you're not providing the resources that they need. Now, listen, I understand budgets are tight. I understand that we don't have all the time deep pockets and unlimited resources and that. And I'm not asking you to throw the kitchen sink at people and just anything that they ask that you give to them. But here's what you got to understand. You've got to find out what they need. And if they're struggling to get the output, you've got to identify what that is. You got to dig in and begin to eliminate the excuses. I see a lot of teams that they need all kinds of support through technology and different things that would help them. But because we don't make the case and we don't go and fight for them and say, listen, let's get you what you need. Now, I understand it's easy just to say that, I need this, I need that. If I just had this, I'd be better. Listen, I'm not saying that you've got to over-resource people, but I find a lot of times the pitfall that leaders fall into is that they're not providing the support. So whether that support is just through you being there to help and encourage, inspire, and lead, or support that they need and resources, you got to ask yourself, am I giving my team what they need? So think about that. Don't sabotage, but you got to support. Another pitfall that I see leaders do is this, and here's what I want you to think about doing is check in, don't check out. I see a lot of leaders, they fall into the pitfall of checking out. Now, again, nobody intentionally does this. I don't think people wake up and say, boy, I hope I'm not there for the team, and I just kind of check out mentally and emotionally and that. But what happens is that you get super busy and you got a lot of things going on. And if you're not careful, you'll begin to check out from what your team needs, and that's you. They need you physically present. They need you emotionally present. They need your focus. You've got to check in with them, not check out. I can remember not long ago, I was talking to one of my coaching clients, and she's a mid-level manager in this organization, and I coach her leader, and I coach her. And I just called her up. We hadn't talked for about a month, and so we had our check-in. I said, hey, how are you doing? And literally, she began to break down and just cry with tears. And she said, John, I am so sorry that I'm getting so emotional right now. I don't know what's going on. But she said, you're the first person that's asked me that since we've talked last time a month ago. And I said, well, hold on, time out. Whoa, what's going on here? I said, well, have you not talked with your team and those around you and your leader? She said, John, I haven't even talked with my leader in the last month. They haven't even checked in. They keep throwing me all kinds of demands through messages, but they haven't even checked in with me. I'm just drowning here. And she was so apologetic. And I said, listen, you don't need to apologize. I get it. I understand. We all need that connection. We need that kind of emotional oxygen of just connecting with our people and checking in every now and then. And I just remember thinking about this, and I thought, wow, that leader that was over this gal, now she, they weren't checking out intentionally. I know them. They have all kinds of best intentions. They're actually a really good leader. But here's what I found is that they got so busy that they failed to do the most fundamental thing, and that's just check in with your team. How you doing? How are things going? Hey, what do you need? Hey, again, find out those resources that they need, right? Find out the support that they need. So I want you to ask yourself, are you checking out from your team? Are you checking out? And maybe you're physically present, but are you checking out emotionally? Is your mind somewhere else? Are you just trying to run through as quick as you can all the different things that you've got to do with your team? Oh, yeah, we've got this meeting. Let's just check in. How can we shorten it? How can we get it as fast as we can? Listen, I understand you're busy. I understand you got a lot going on. But if you start checking out from your team physically and or emotionally, your team is going to start checking out from you. And ultimately, you're going to start checking out from the impact that you can really have. It's not going to happen. So you've got to ask yourself, what am I doing to connect with my team? How often am I checking in with them? And not just tactically, because I think a lot of times leaders are tactically checking in, Hey, how's it going? What do you need on that project? Where are we at in the process? What's the deadline here? Are we going to be able to hit that? They're checking in with all the tactical things, but where they fail to check in is kind of on that relational side, where they connect with them. And I'm not saying that you got to sit down and have coffee with your team members all the time and just spend hours checking in and relationally and all that. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is it does take a level of just relationally connecting with them, not just tactically connecting with them. So I want you to kind of think about how much time do you spend on the tactical and how much time are you spending on the relational side of it. And I want you to rate yourself. What does that look like? What is that ratio, that percentage? And listen, I would say this. It doesn't have to be 50-50. I understand. There is a lot more tactically to be done than there is relationally, but you got to ask yourself, if you're falling under about 20 or 30% roughly of spending time connecting with your team. So if you're at 90% tactical and 10% relational, then I'm just going to tell you right now, you're going to start to see the effect of that over time. You need to be about a 70-30, 60-40, somewhere in there. That's probably a good, healthy place. If it gets more than that, if it's a 50-50, you're probably, it's great that you're having all this connection, but you're probably spending a lot of time here that you're missing out on some tactical. So I just want you to think about that ratio and just kind of do a little self-reflection and ask yourself, am I checking in with my team and not just checking off a box, but am I emotionally present? Am I leading in an effective way? Am I connecting with them? Am I giving them all that I've got? Don't delegate and then disappear. You do that, and it's going to be bad news. Listen, I see a lot of leaders, and I think they should be illusionists. I mean, they delegate, and then they disappear. It's like a magic act. It's like, where did you go? You can't do that. You've got to be present, and you got to check in with your team. So don't fall into that pitfall of checking out. All right, third thought I want you to think about is this. Develop, don't direct. Ooh, this is a big one. I could literally spend the whole day right here. Because as a leader, your job is not to direct, it's to develop. And this gets misconstrued big time. Because what I find is that there are a lot of leaders that go into director mode. I mean, they drop their head, and it is all about telling everyone what to do. Here's what you got to do. Here's how you got to do it. Here's how you got to solve the problem. Here's what I need you to do. Here's the 2 steps. Follow this. I'm going to explain it. Go execute on it. And they're spending all their time directing. They're telling everybody what to do, not out of control necessarily and out of a bad intention. It's just that they're telling everybody what to do. They're thinking for everyone. They're solving everyone's problems. They're doing all this on their own. They're not allowing their team to develop, to be problem solvers. They're not pushing them to think out of the box, to solve their own issues, and to come up with ideas of what they can do to move forward and get things done. And I see a lot of leaders that they fall into a director mode, not a developer mode. In fact, I this title of a director in organizations, one day, I don't know, if I had it my way, one day I'm just going to say, you know what, can we just stop calling people directors and we're just going to call them developers? That's really what they are. If you want everyone to go around and direct everybody, I mean, you can do that, but you're never going to raise up the next generation of leaders. You're never going to be able to get people to be their best because you're not developing them. You just tell them what to do. You're just walking around, just kind of being this kind of, director, so to speak. And that's exhausting. And listen, you know what happens when you direct more than you develop? When you're not around, when you go on vacation or you're sick one day or you're busy doing another project, guess what happens? Nothing. Nobody knows what to do because you're not there to direct them. You're not there to push them. You're not there to tell them what to do and figure out their day for them and figure out their problem solving and all those kind of things. And so they don't know what to do. They're stuck. They're stalled. And they're waiting for you to show up. That is a sign right there that you are not developing, you're directing. So I want to challenge you. Be a developer, not just a director. I'm not saying that you don't have to give direction. I'm not saying that you should never have orders and all those kind of things. Of course, there's a time to direct, but you need to be thinking about how do I be a developer way more than I'm a director. So stop telling everybody what to do and begin to lead with questions. Get them to come up with answers, solutions, deadlines. Instead of saying, hey, so-and-so, I need this done next Friday at 2:00. You say, listen, when can you get this to me? If you put forth all your effort, how can you make this happen? And get them to engage with that problem solving and be accountable to the things they came up with. Now, that's a whole nother issue, and I want to challenge you. lead with questions, develop, don't just direct. We could spend all day here. This is a massive pitfall that I find leaders fall into. And here's what it does. When you fall into this thing, you're going to get stuck because the whole system is dependent on you being there directing everyone. And your team is going to get stuck. They're never going to pull out their potential and be their best. And you have the ultimate level of success because it's all dependent on you showing up and directing everyone. And that limits you, and it limits everyone around you. When you're a developer, then all of a sudden now you begin to open the lid, and you just, it's limitless what you can do, okay? All right, next thought is this. Coach, don't control. Coach, don't control. Now, this is kind of a cousin to the last one of develop, don't just direct. So coach, don't control. A lot of leaders, what I see them do is begin to control everything. They want it done their way. They want it done the way that they see fit. Now, there is a fine line between objective feedback and subjective feedback. And what I mean by that is this. Objective feedback is, listen, this is the right way to do it because this is the way that reflects our organization, what we're trying to accomplish. It's the standard of excellence that we pride ourselves on. That is very objective as long as the result is getting there. Where it gets really, really out of control is when we start getting very subjective. This is where we start trying to control everything by our preference, our way of solving it. Now, we think our way is the right way. It's the only way if we're not careful. And what happens is we start trying to recreate ourselves and replicate us. And so instead of leaning into other people's uniqueness and their strengths and what makes them wired the way that they are and kind of tapping into that, what we start doing is trying to clone ourselves into everybody else. I want everyone to think like me, breathe like me, compute like me, problem solve like me, and all of this. So you've got to be very careful that you are a coach, not that you're a controller. And if you think about a coach, just think about sports. Think about what a coach does. A coach is there to get the best out of the player. And they've got to look at every different player on that team, and they have to realize that every person is wired different. They don't just go out there and say, well, you need to do it the way that I do it. You need to do it the way that is the right way, which is my way. Of course not. That'd be crazy. One coach couldn't do that with a whole team because their way may not be the way for somebody else. So you've got to be objective. What is the outcome? What is the result that we can't sway from? What is the objective goal that we're looking to cross and to finish and to get into the end zone, so to speak? But then be very careful that you subjectively don't try to make the path there your way and only your way, because it will limit other people. Number one, it devalues the strengths that they bring to the table, and it doesn't give them any autonomy or agency to kind of work through it and bring their uniqueness to the picture. So you've got to be very careful. I always say this, that you've got to lead everyone different. And it's a difference between chess and checkers. If you think about it, when you play checkers, every piece moves the same. You just treat every piece the same, and it's kind of a kid's game. It's fun, but it's a pretty basic concept. But leadership is not like checkers. It's like chess. You understand that every piece moves a little different, and you got to understand how to work with your pieces, how to utilize those to their maximum potential. Not everybody can go down the whole board in one leap. Not everybody's a rook. Not everybody is the queen that can go down in one move. And so you got to understand that everybody's wired different. So you got to treat everyone a little bit different, and your expectations may vary. Now, objectively, they're the same for everyone. High output, results driven, all those things. But subjectively, you've got to allow yourself to be able to give people agency. So coach them, lean into their uniqueness. Now, you can give advice and say, listen, here's the way that I do it. Here's the way that's been helpful for me. But remember, there's a big difference between advice and telling someone that it must be done this way. And I see this pitfall a lot with leaders, because what happens is you stifle the growth in other people, and they begin to get a little bit disillusioned. They begin to say, you know what, I really don't want to do this, because if I don't do it their way, then it's never the right way. And they're trying to fit somebody into your mold, and it's not their mold. So I want you to really think about what is objective and what is subjective. And I want you to identify that. Where in your feedback with others might you being you might be being a little bit too subjective, where it's all about your way. Then I want you to take a hard look in the mirror and say, am I being objective with my expectations in the feedback that I give others? Or am I starting to control a little bit more than I should? And I've got to loosen up on that. And that is hard for a leader to do because, listen, you probably figured out some really great ways to do things. But if you're not careful, you'll think it's the only way to do things. Sometimes that might be objective and that might be true. Many times it's subjective and it's not. Be a coach. Don't be a controller. Make sure you're coaching people, not just controlling them, okay? Next thought that I want you to think about is this. Motivate, don't manipulate. One of the pitfalls that I see leaders fall into all the time is they start to manipulate people. Again, nobody wakes up and says, I'm going to go manipulate people today. If you do, then you might need to get some help and get some therapy. I can help you or somebody else, but you need to get some help. But I don't think anybody does that. Nobody wakes up and says, boy, I want to really try to manipulate people today, get them to do something. Of course they don't do that. But what happens is if you're not careful, you'll start to lean on manipulation tactics rather than motivating people. And what's the difference? What's the difference between motivation and manipulation? Well, manipulation is about trying to get somebody to do something that you want them to do, but they really don't want to do it. Okay, now, as a leader, you got to think about, okay, what am I going to go to then if they don't want to do something? Am I going to start trying to lead out of fear and just be aggressive and tell people you better do this? Well, that doesn't work real well. Leading out of fear never really leads to great outcomes. In fact, people will just leave you because they're not going to be around that kind of junk for very long. Or we start to kind of put all of these incentives in place, but it's not really connecting with people because it's our incentives. It's things that we kind of throw over them or comments that we try to make to say, well, I don't you care about the success of the organization, right? And it's kind of this, it's somewhat manipulative. You're not really trying to help them. You're really just trying to kind of say something to coerce them into doing something. So think about motivation. The difference is this. Motivation is very pure. It's about starting with the other person and saying, okay, what can I do as a leader to help engage you into this process that's meaningful to you? Not meaningful to you as the leader, but meaningful to the person you're talking to. So when you're talking to the other person, you say, how can I motivate you? What is it that is meaningful to you? So you got to ask yourself, am I driving my team through motivation or am I trying to manipulate them somehow? Am I driving them with connecting with them and saying, listen, what is it that their motivation style is? There was a book years ago by Tamara Lowe that she did a phenomenal book about motivational DNA. And one of the things that she talked about was that people are motivated very much so by either internal forces or external. And you got to know the difference between who you're talking to because it's kind of like the chess and checkers. You got to know who you're dealing with. If someone is very motivated by internal things, meaning purpose, value, meaning, appreciation, feeling like they really accomplished something and contributed something big, it's very heartfelt to them. Then if you dangle all these external things to them, like competition or more money or compensation or more less work days or whatever it is, that's not going to motivate them. They're not motivated by external things. They're not motivated by putting a leaderboard up and seeing who's got the most sales today on the team. That doesn't drive them. They're motivated by something very internal. Now, vice versa, if you got someone who's very externally motivated, that they are driven by competition. They are driven by metrics and numbers and winning, and they're driven by maybe monetary things or whatever it may be, then you've got to ask yourself, am I driving them and motivating that way? Or am I trying to be all sentimental and doing all this internal motivation with someone when really that's not really what drives them every day? And neither one is right or wrong, internal or external. It's just how are they wired? So I want you to think about this. Am I motivating my team or am I trying to get into these cheap tricks of manipulation where it's just me trying to convince other people about how to do something or why they need to do it and why it's so important? Or am I tapping into their motivational style? Am I connecting with them internally to say, listen, let me find out who you are and how you're wired. And if I can find that and see if it's more internal or external, then I can begin to tap into that in a way that truly drives motivation and progress and performance rather than me just trying to manipulate you to get there. So that means that you've got to make sure that the carrots that you're dangling in front of others are carrots that match their motivation style. You got to make sure that those carrots are something that's meaningful to them, that connects with them, that really resonates with them. That means, again, you got to check in so you don't check out. You got to support so you don't sabotage. You got to coach rather than control. You got to develop people rather than direct so that you can motivate them. All right, last thought is this. Here's the sixth pitfall is this. You've got to make sure that you clarify, don't complicate. A lot of leaders fall into the pitfall of complicating everything. They make everything just so complex and difficult, and they add layer after layer of complexities and confusion and all kinds of systems and processes and all this stuff. And here's why we do it. We do it because we're not dealing with the root problem. That's usually why we do it. So we put all these safeguards in. Instead of dealing with the real issue, we begin to put all these rules and regulations and make it really complex. So somebody's coming to work late all the time on your team. And so instead of addressing that person and just saying, you know what, we're going to talk about this and we're going to connect and figure out why this is going on because I care, I want to develop, I want to coach, I want to help you. What we do is we start saying, okay, by the way, there's a new policy for all team members that if you're 5 minutes late, we're going to begin to dock you on your pay starting August 1st. And so you make this new rule that everybody else is going, where did this come from? And they all know it's because of this one person that you're not dealing with. And so now you made this rule or complexity to kind of circumvent the process. And instead of dealing with it, you're just creating all these complexities and rules. And this is what I see people do. And they complicate things by putting layer after layer. Instead of dealing with someone's incompetency, what they do is they actually bring on another person for them. They say, oh, well, you're just so overworked. Let's bring on another person. We'll give an assistant to them. I'm thinking, hold on, time out. Was the root issue that they literally are being overworked and they need somebody else, or that they're really inefficient, that they're not prioritizing right? They don't understand productivity and all the secrets of Parkinson's law. They don't understand the 212 and MED rule and all these things that we could teach in productivity to help people get better in what they do. Have you talked to them about this, the no-gap schedule? I mean, what are they doing? Let's first make sure you're dealing with the root problem instead of adding all this other layer of complexity. So I want you to think about that. Are you circumventing issues and creating layers of complexity because you're not dealing with the root issue? Think about that. Now, sometimes it may not be that it's a bad thing. It's just that there's a lot of complexities in the organization. And so instead of, as a leader, trying to simplify and just declutter everything, you begin to kind of complicate it by trying to have these incredibly huge workflows and that. And what I want you to think about is with your team, are you making things too complex? You got to ask yourself, is there too much red tape? Is there too much in our processes that are just unnecessary? What do we need to do? So sometimes you got to go back to the drawing board with your team members and say, listen, let's get clarity on this. Let's find out what is absolutely essential, what is absolutely necessary, and not have all these extra steps that are not necessary. So clarify, don't add complexities to what you're doing. A leader should make things simple, easy, clarity, not complex, layered, and robust and that. So I want you to think about, as a leader, are you adding to the clarity to your team? Are they clear on what needs to be done, or are there things that are complex that you need to go back to the drawing board on? Maybe that's a conversation you got to have with your team and just say, what is in your role is complex that we need to simplify or that you need clarity on. So I want to challenge you with these 6 pitfalls. Think about which one you deal with the most, and I want you to think about, what do I need to be challenged with today? I promise you that if you listened closely today, there were some nuggets in here of things that you've got to work on. They may not be horrible, but they're things that you need to improve and get better in. So I want you to think about which pitfall for you is the one that you need to focus in on. You need to be intentional about so that you don't fall into it, get stuck, and limit your influence and impact, and then limit those around you. If you'll begin to take those tips we talked about today, I'm telling you, in 25 years of coaching, that I have seen leaders become way more successful by doing the right things than by getting caught in these pitfalls that limit what they do. So I hope this was helpful to you guys. Make sure you tune in next month and go check out JohnBarrettLeadership.com johnbarrettleadership.com for all my resources. I hope this is adding value to you because I care for you and I want to see you successful in the future, my friend.
Thanks for listening to the John Barrett Leadership Podcast. To get more of John's resources, visit www.johnbarrettleadership.com.